topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV, where we bring you educational information from top local experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Now sit back and listen to experts in family law, association law, hearing loss, business brokers, home care, along with many other topics. Now here are your hosts, Steve-O and Sophia.
Hey, good afternoon, we're in Tampa today. Got too many Florida cities, but you know what? It's a day after Christmas. I hope everybody had a wonderful and blessed Christmas. I was just telling our guest, that the only problem is it wasn't long enough. It seems like it was like over, and it's really sad that it's only one day. Anyway, I'm so glad you joined us today. We're going to be here to answer all your questions on community association law. And hey, this is one time you can speak to an attorney and it not cost you anything. So you want to let your friends know if they're in an HOA or a condo association. Tell them about our show right now. We're on for the next 50 minutes, and I think you're going to really enjoy our show. We have got such a great guest. She's been with us many times before, and her firm, K. Bender Rimbaum, has been with us for 10 years. They are the longest running expert, and people love this show. If you'd like to call in, the phone number here is 561-623-9429. We also have questions that you've been sending in over the last 3 to 4 weeks, which we'll be asking our guest, Kirsten. And we also, if you're watching us live, you can also go to our chat line on the side and ask your question. So let me introduce you to a good friend, Kirsten Hurst. Thank you, Kirsten.
Hi, Steve. Hello, everyone.
Happy Merry Christmas. We won't see you again till, this is weird saying this, won't see you till next year.
Yes, indeed.
So Kirsten will be back with us in January. So we want to also wish you and your family, your 3 kids,
I sure did. Yes, they're 8, 9, and going on 4. So you can imagine how Christmas was in my house.
So you work 24/7 then?
Pretty much.
Kirsten, I got to tell you something that has nothing to do with the show. I think that's the hardest job in the world, being a mother. It is so difficult unless you have some kind of a magic wand, because I saw my wife raise our 3 kids, and it was like, how did she come up with the patience, the strength, the answers, hearing the same question over and over again? So here you have, you're a successful lawyer and raising 3 kids. God bless you.
I definitely don't sleep much, Steve.
Yeah. I can imagine that. Tell everybody, first of all, about your background and about K. Bender Rimbaum.
Sure. So I've been with the firm since 2010. I've been practicing law for 15 years, and 14 of which have been exclusively in this area of the law and with K. Bender. So I used to work at the Pompano office down in South Florida, but now I'm the managing attorney for the firm located in Hillsborough County in Tampa, Florida. So we service clients all over the West Coast.
You know, I first of all, I think it's such a great part of the country. And now, do you actually live in Tampa now?
Yes, I do.
Oh,
I live
okay.
about
That's
15 minutes from the office off of West Shore in the
no
financial district.
trains to the
So,
office.
no. And the weather is great. I there's I love this area.
Well, you know what? First of all, I got to tell you, I love doing the show with you. You are so knowledgeable. Um, we
Sorry
really
to
give
interrupt,
people.
but you have a caller on the line, Sam.
Oh, okay. Let me just finish my thoughts here. I just want to thank Kirsten because she is so knowledgeable with community association law. And I got to tell you, I think we're going to have a lot of callers today, which we were just talking about the new laws that take effect starting next month. So
Sure.
we'll be prepared for that. Let's go to our first caller.
Yes, sir.
Caller, hey, good afternoon.
Thank you. My name is Sam. This is the first time I've called on Ask the Experts, and I got an email
Oh,
on
well,
it.
we're
So
not
I
even gonna
thought I'd
charge you.
have a question.
Good.
My question is, I am in a small condominium complex. It's only 12 owners, 12 units, and we get a email from the treasurer stating that here is the checking information that you will need as you begin depositing your monthly fees at Bank of America starting in January. The treasurer will no longer accept checks or payments through the U.S. mail. And they list the checking account number, they list the routing number, and then it says, if you Zelle, use the following email. And it's the treasurer's email. Is that legal? There's been no board meeting or anything. It's like all of a sudden, the person does not want to get involved depositing checks. He wants to go directly to the condominium checking account. And I can't believe that they divulged the checking account number. That's my question. Is that legal?
Well, I mean, if let me, I guess, rephrase the question. If you're asking, is it legal to change the mechanism by which owners will be required to deposit or, pay their assessment? I mean, certainly the board has the discretion to make changes in that collection policy. It would have been great if, a quorum of the board had met at an open meeting and, discussed the change in the policy and, how assessments, I guess, are going to be collected moving forward, and certainly have that reflected in the minutes. Typically associations provide, multiple mechanisms by which you can pay your assessments, whether it's, sending your deposit to a lockbox or, have automatic payments deducted from the account or, provide an address for mailing of checks. But, ultimately that's within the discretion of the board.
Okay. Well, there was never a board meeting to discuss that. There are some owners that have it deducted from their checking account directly to the association account.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm old fashioned. I just write a check, but all of a sudden the treasurer says he no longer will accept checks and to use Zelle, and then it's being sent to his personal email. I thought that was strange.
I mean, I would, I would ask him for minutes of the board meeting at which this decision was made.
Okay.
I can answer that question,
And
by
if
the way.
not, see if the board would ratify this decision. No single director, and certainly not the treasurer, should be making these decisions unilaterally. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I can tell you with
I agree
Zelle,
with that.
I can tell you with Zelle caller that we take Zelle, and they the only way people can send us money through Zelle or any of the cash apps is either through our phone number or my email address. So that's just the way they do it. It doesn't have to be a business address. It's whatever your email
Okay.
address is.
Okay, so that would be legal then. Send it directly to the director then.
And we
So
don't
the
ever
question is,
see,
then I would,
we don't see your credit card
Pardon?
information.
right.
Well,
Understand.
and keep
So the
in
question
mind,
I
the
need to
director
do
is also,
send my payment in, but ask for the minutes.
sure. And remember that, you know, the treasurer and really any director on the board is serving as a fiduciary for the association, basically as a, you know, as a trustee for the members of the community. So they have a fiduciary obligation to make sure that funds are properly applied, you know, to the association accounts and are properly used in accordance with your, you know, an approved budget.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, that answered my question then. I guess
Thank you
I'll
for
have to
calling.
start doing it.
So thanks.
Let's go to our next caller, Joel. You have a question for Kirsten?
Joel is not on the line at this moment.
Okay, we lost Joel. That's fine. Paul had a question, if you want to flash it up there, Rebel. Says that should have been put on the agenda to the board meetings so that the owners could voice their distinction.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. We just mentioned that. Mhm.
You know, Kirsten, we get a lot of emails from people, from owners that are upset that they don't get the information about the meetings and they don't feel like they're being kept up to date. But now in condos, don't they have to have a website?
Well, the website obligation is really for condominium associations that have 150 units or more.
That's right.
That's where the
Joel
website
is on the
obligation
line now.
comes in. Yeah. You know,
Okay.
but well, go ahead. You
Go
wanna
ahead,
take
Joe, are you back with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we hear you fine.
Oh, great. Hi, Kirsten. If I can call you Kirsten. I have a question about candidates for board of directors, and particularly with regard to delinquency of payment of assessments. The act is a little bit confusing, and I've wondered if you could help clarify this. If an owner has been delinquent in paying an assessment, and the bylaws and the act, for that matter, suggest that interest accrues on any overdue payments that are not paid when due. I use that term from the act, and so the question then becomes, if that owner wants to be a candidate, does the disqualification says that it's any delinquency in the payment of an assessment. So if the disqualification arises, if he pays the principal amount, the original principal amount of the assessment, but not the accrued interest. And to that point, if I could just continue, the act is a little bit confusing because later on it talks about also so our bylaws say that, the act says that, but also the act goes on to say that any payment by an owner of an amount that's due will be applied first to the interest and then to the assessment. So it seems to me that interest needs to be paid before the assessment will be, or any monies will be credited against the delinquent assessment. The short question is, does interest on overdue assessments have to be paid in order, or if not, will that disqualify an owner from being a candidate for the board?
Yes, that was a very loaded question, but so the the statute originally read, or a few years ago, did say that if an owner was delinquent in any monetary obligation to the association, that would disqualify the owner from candidacy. Okay, but that part of the statute was amended a few years ago, which now specifically says that only delinquency on assessments would disqualify the owner from candidacy. That means the name of the owner cannot be put on the ballot. Now, you are correct that the statute also says that in the event of a delinquency, and presuming your documents authorize collection of assessments and late fees, that the application of sums received has to be done in accordance with the statute, right? So interest and late fees and attorney's fees, all that, has to be, the assessments have to be applied towards those outstanding sums, and then the balance is applied to assessments. So if you've applied the payments in accordance with the statute, then the interest should have been paid off first, right? So sounds like there would be still a balance of assessments due.
Okay, can I just, I've been looking at this a little bit carefully, so I can just refine, if I may, that it seems like interest is only applicable in that case to the assessments, not to the late fees or the lawyer's fees or whatever the other quote monetary obligations are. So which really enforces, I think, the idea that at least accrued interest has to be paid on any overdue assessment, or else the owner would be not qualified to be a candidate.
Right. So it's only if there's an outstanding balance on the assessments that would disqualify.
Right.
Him. Yeah.
Okay. Good to know. Thank you. Thanks very much. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Joe.
These calls are terrific. Thank you.
So, we were talking a little bit before the show. We are getting inundated, which means your show is doing really well, but people are calling us here. If it's something that they need to call your office, we give them out your phone number. And I'm not trying to sound like Steve O. Downer, but people are worried about what's going to happen with the new laws, the reserve clause, the assessments. They're very concerned about that. Insurance, which, the board has nothing to do with that. But is there anything that you can tell our listeners that might ease things for them a little bit? Anything coming around the corner? Anything?
I mean, I'm not aware of any legislation, to address insurance. I mean, insurance seems to be, it is what it is type of deal. But, let me just clarify, because I believe you had some other owners or some other board members that had asked questions about SIR. So this might be a good time.
Yes.
To address that. What is the requirement, and then the ability to waive reserves, because the SIRS, which is the Structural Integrity Reserve Study, okay, there's that looming deadline coming around the corner, which is December 31st of 2024. Okay, but first of all, that applies, number one, to residential condominium associations. Okay. And the association needed to have existed before July 1st of 2022, and applies only if the association has buildings that are 3 stories or higher.
Right.
Okay. So you need to have been in existence before July of 2022, and only applies to those buildings that are 3 stories and higher. Now, you have to complete the SIR study by December 31st of 2024. Okay, and the statute provides a number of components that the visual inspection of the study has to take into account. The roof, There's the, I guess, fireproofing, there's the painting, there's the windows, doors. And again, one of the clarifications in the statute was that these are only for items that the association is responsible for maintaining under the governing documents. So it's not, all windows, it's not all doors, it's only windows and doors that the association is responsible for maintaining under the governing documents. Okay, so once you have the CERS completed, okay, what the statute says in terms of the, the waiver of these reserves is that if you adopt the budget after December 31st of 2024, the association can no longer waive or partially fund those CERS components. That's, again, only for buildings that are 3 stories and higher. Now, if you're not ready, if the association is not ready to yet fully fund these CERS components, okay, you still have the option for the membership to waive or partially fund those CERS components, as long as that vote is taken before December 31st of 2024. So you still have some time. Okay, this really is going to be for the 2025 budgets. Okay, so again, if you're in a building, in a condominium building, 3 stories or higher, okay, for any budget that is adopted before December 31st of 2024, you still have the option of giving the owners, okay, the option to vote to either waive or partially fund those CERS components. Now, the statute did change, okay, the voting requirement. And right now, the voting percentage that you would need to waive or partially fund the CERS components is the majority of the voting interest. It used to be a majority of quorum, but now it's just the majority of the voting interest. So if you have a condominium that has 100 units, okay, it would be 50% plus 1. And again, this would only apply if owners did the actual vote. You took the actual vote before December 31st of 2024, and then the board adopts the budget with the waived or partial CERS components before December 31st of 2024. After that date, the association has to fully fund. So that's presumably going into 2026. Now, one thing I also want to point out is that the statute originally, before the CERS came into play, there was a section in the statute that said the type of reserve funding that you need to have for a condominium, which was for painting originally, for the roof, for paving, and any other deferred maintenance expense that would cost over $10,000, right? Well, those funding obligations for those reserve items didn't go away. So, I mean, the roof and the painting are not part of the CERS components, but for example, pavement is not an item that's under the CERS. So associations that are that have 3 stories or higher are still obligated to fully fund that reserve item for paving if you're responsible for maintaining, streets. But the only difference is that for these non-CERS reserve items, the board still can have owners waive or partially fund those non-CERS reserve items. That hasn't gone away. Okay, and that's, as far as I'm aware, that's still going to be in the statute in, going into 2024. Now, if you're condominium with, 1 or 2 story buildings, okay, you don't have the obligation to do the CERS, okay, but you still have the obligation to fully fund these other reserves that I mentioned, the paving, the painting, the roof, unless owners vote to waive or partially fund those reserves. Okay, so nothing has changed in terms of those statutory reserve items.
Kirsten, there's a lot of people who want to know if they have underground parking. Is that considered one of the 3rd levels?
You mean like if there's a garage and
Yes,
then
the
the
garage
first
underground.
unit is, my understanding it's considered part of the 3 stories, but, again, that the definition of what a 3-story building is based on the building code, and I'm certainly not an expert in the building code. That's really something for the engineer of the association to confirm. So if you have any
Okay.
doubts, then, you need to then retain an engineer and get a written opinion from the engineer.
Okay. Let's go to Stan. Is Stan still there?
Stand still here.
Okay, buddy. You have a question for Kirsten?
All right. We have a 77 member HOA. We established a $22,000 for the reserve in our budget. Does that have to be allocated among the 14 categories of that we use to calculate the reserve? Or can you all put it into a general category?
Now, when you say HOA, you're I'm presuming you're under 720, not 718, correct?
Right.
Okay. So with HOAs, reserves are a little bit different. So with HOAs, when we're talking about reserves, if we're talking about, statutorily protected reserves, okay, the only way to create those reserves is if the membership votes to create those reserves. So you'd have to go back to your, look in the official records to see if there is some, some documentation confirming that the membership at some point, voted to, establish these statutory reserves. If there is a record of that, then those statutory reserves can only be used for the specific purpose for which they were designated. And they have to be fully funded unless they're waived or partially funded in accordance with the statute. So very similar to the Condominium Act, you'd need a vote of the membership to, to waive, to partially fund those reserves, and then to use those reserves for any alternate purposes. Now, if the membership did not establish these reserves to be, statutorily protected, then, that sounds like they're more of, a discretionary fund, right? So, in that case, they really are more like operating expenses. So you can, use those funds for any, bona fide association expense that's authorized under the governing documents.
If the
Does that
members
help?
had approved reserves, does it have to be allocated for specific categories, or can it be all put in a general amount?
Well, again, if they're not statutorily protected reserves, I mean, you can have a line item on the budget that says, contingency fund, unless the board wants to specifically allocate, portions of those funds for specific purposes. That's assuming these are not statutory reserves. They're then treated more like operating funds. So you can do it one line item, or you can have multiple line items for, to categorize those funds. Board decision.
Okay. Second question, the board approved an increase in the monthly assessment by $7. The coupon booklets just came in today. Some people are going to be underpaid, and the association charges $50 late fee for a $7 shortage, 25 of which goes to the HOA and 25 goes to the management company who insists this is to pay for the mandatory letter that says we're going to turn you over to an attorney if you don't pay this money. Is the $25, is the letter required for a $7 past due? And is it required every month when they don't pay it?
I mean, I don't know if that is the, like a statutory pre-lien letter, or if this is, a courtesy letter that your management company is going to send, but it's going to charge the association or the delinquent owner. I mean, that, that depends on the facts and the management agreement.
This
Did I lose you, Steve?
$25 mandatory letter is something that started a year or two ago in response to some statute that was passed. We have never agreed to it as a HOA. It's just something the management company does, I assume, to make more money.
Well, if we're talking about the notice of late assessment, yes, that is a statutory letter that the association must send before starting collection action. Basically, it's almost like the final letter, giving owners 30 days to pay before the association can, start collecting attorney's fees and costs for the collection action. But again, whether the association, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, caller.
They're charging it immediately upon the first notice for a $7 charge that they're going to turn somebody over. This seems extremely improper.
Well, it's a letter that must be sent before you start collections. It is a statutory letter. Now, whether the board wants to give owners, perhaps a courtesy notice, before starting that formal process, that is a business decision. I don't know what your governing documents say about what your collection process is. So that's probably something you'd want to maybe bring up to the board. Take a look at your bylaws, your declaration, see what collection process is outlined there.
No, this is what the management company is saying is required upon the first notice.
Well, it is the first notice before we start collections. But again, boards can't have the discretion to also give courtesy notices before sending the statutory notice. That is a business decision.
Okay, thank you.
That would be in their docs, though, right?
Yeah, and boards typically have the discretion to adopt a collection policy that's consistent with their governing documents. So, it's not unreasonable to provide a courtesy notice. Many of our clients do, but it's not, it's not a violation of the governing documents to proceed straight to collection unless you have some requirement in your governing documents, requiring the boards to give you some kind of courtesy notice.
I'm going to get in this. Our boards are crazy today. Thank you for all your calls and your questions. Before we go to break, I want to get Richard's question in. In an HOA document that do not mention who can pick a color for the house, is that true?
So when we're talking about architectural change,
yes,
I'm not quite sure what the caller's question is, but
he wants to know who's in charge of choosing the color.
Well, it depends. I mean, you might have governing documents that say you can't paint your color, or you can't, alter anything on the exterior of the lot without prior board approval. So check the governing documents, see if you have language to that effect. And if so, there might be, an architectural request form that you might need to submit and identify the proposed color. And, the board, or if there's an architectural control committee, typically they will review that application, and they should have, if they are, if they are limiting the types of colors that you can paint your house, then they should have some kind of specifications or rules in place, identifying what the color scheme is. And that would be the basis to disapprove a color that's not in that color wheel of approved colors.
We're going to go to break. The number here is 561-623-9429. If you've got a question for Kirsten, we're going to go to break now. When we come back, we've got more with Ask the Experts, Kay Bender Rimbaum, Community Association Law.
Kay Bender Rimbaum is a full-service community association law firm dedicated to the representation of community associations throughout Florida. On kbrlegal.com, you can learn more about their offices in Pompano Beach, Palm Beach Gardens, Orlando, Tampa, as well as throughout Miami-Dade by appointment. Several Kay Bender Rimbaum attorneys are board-certified specialists in condominium and plan development law and assist clients with all matters of community association legal issues while keeping them up to date on new developments that affect their associations. Kay Bender Rimbaum is also a well-known provider of free legal education for managers and board members. Contact Kay Bender Rimbaum today by calling 800-974-0680. That's 800-974-0680 to reach any of their locations. You can also visit them online at kbrlegal.com or write to them at info@kbrlegal.com.
And we are back with the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV with your hosts, Steve-O, Sophia, and their expert guests.
And we are back. This is the Ask the Expert show. If you'd like to call in, if you have a question for Kirsten, we still got about 20 minutes. The number here is 561-623-9429, Community Association Law. We're talking about condo and HOA associations. We are slammed today. Great questions today. Kirsten, do you have the schedule for the next month?
I sure do. So we have a couple
Let's go over that.
Yeah. And this is, by the way, on our website. So anybody can go on our website, and I encourage, callers to do so. Looks like our first class is on January 12th. That's taught by Alan, who's the managing attorney of our Orlando office. And he's going to be talking about collections. So there's been a couple of calls today about collections. He's going to cover all aspects of that. So be sure to attend if you're available. There's also, let's see, I'm teaching January 16th, a class on elections. That's certainly a relevant topic. We're in the season of elections, so I'll be covering elections for condominiums and HOAs. January 17th, we have a board member certification class, also taught by Alan. And then I'm teaching again on January 25th, all about updating your governing documents.
Beautiful. We're also showing, if you're watching, we're showing, for example, January 3rd at 6:30 p.m., City of Weston Condo Board Member Certification. Very important. January 12th, 11:30. It's going to be a Zoom association collections, and January 16th at 2 p.m. will be another Zoom class on elections for associations. Like Kirsten said, you can go to kbrlegal.com. Everything is up there. Let's go back. God, we're slammed today, Kirsten.
Busy.
Yes. This is a party season, and Cheryl in Tampa said that their attorney said they must have activities included in their docs to pay for the parties. The association pays to maintain common elements. So what are your thoughts?
I will tend to agree. I will agree with the attorney. So if the association wants to spend common funds on, social activities like a holiday party, they should and better have authority in their governing documents to spend those funds for that purpose. And that's because under the law, the association can really only use funds collected from assessments only for common expenses that are directly related to the operation, management, maintenance, repair of the common elements and the association. So, unless those funds are directly related for that purpose, you subject the association to a potential legal challenge for, misuse of funds. So if your documents don't currently allow use of association funds for these social activities, you can amend. That is something that, can be amended in the governing documents to give the association proper authority for use of those funds, but will likely require membership approval. So you'd have to look at your declaration of condominium or your declaration of covenants to see what the membership approval requirement is to amend.
Here's a different person. This is Carrie in Tampa. She has kind of a party question. Refresh our memories on what a social committee in a condo can do monetarily wise if there is no budget line for holiday parties. Can we even have a budget line for social committee in a condo to be able to have a holiday party?
Yes, I mean it's a similar question to what the other caller had asked. Just slight variation. I mean, you wouldn't, and I wouldn't even recommend as legal counsel for this association to put a line item on the budget for social or recreational activities unless you have documentary authority to support that line budget. In my experience, governing documents don't typically, give that authority to associations. So it's something that would need to be amended into the documents.
Go to Steve in St. Petersburg. HOA townhomes. Our board doesn't hold proper meetings. You can see with the meetings, and they aren't giving us an opportunity to vet contractors. What can we do?
Okay. So sounds like the issue is with contractors that are doing work in this community.
They feel like, I guess they don't have a say.
Yeah. Well, and that's and typically that is the case. Typically it is a function of the board to vet contractors, look at bids, and then ultimately decide on a contractor and approve that contract. Now, the caller is right in the sense that typically this should be done at open board meetings, right? Where the board presents, the multiple contractors and projects to the membership and makes a decision in the presence of the membership. Not necessarily the membership gets to approve them unless the governing documents, require an owner vote on that. But bids and contracts are part of the official records. So, while the owner might not necessarily have the authority to vet the contractors, they can certainly, see the bids and certainly are entitled to look at the contract. So you can make a request to inspect the official records, and if a particular project or a particular contract is a big issue in the community, the membership can also petition the board to put an agenda item at their next meeting and, force the board to discuss the issue. So, look at the governing documents, see what membership approval percentage is required for the owners to petition the board to call a meeting and place an item on the agenda. Otherwise, the statute says that 20% of the membership can petition the board. So that's another way that they can force a meeting to discuss this issue.
Here's Rob in Palm Harbor. We haven't had an election in 5 years. we are a condo. We have no budget. Should we notify the BBPR?
Well, there could be a number of reasons that the association has an election, right? Legitimate reasons. For example, with condominiums, you don't need to have a quorum to have an election. All you need is to have 20% of the owners cast a ballot. So if you don't have 20% of the election ballots cast, then you wouldn't need an election. You wouldn't have an election. And as you know, Steve, there are many condominiums out there where, there's apathy. Unfortunately,
Yes.
That's just how it is. So a lot of owners complain, but they don't submit an election ballot. So you wouldn't have an election in that case. Or, for example, if the number of candidates, equals or is less than the number of vacancies on the board, that's another instance you would need an election. So the board will just, roll over and be seated by acclamation. So, it's hard for me to say whether, the basis for not having an election is legitimate or not. But, certainly if you have any concerns, the caller can certainly make a complaint with the DBPR, the Division of Condominiums, on the election issue and, also on the failure to adopt the budget. I mean, the board does have an obligation to adopt the budget every year. So there shouldn't be a reason why they don't adopt a budget.
Do owners sometimes get involved with the maintenance of the property?
In what sense?
One example, volunteering. And here's the reason why I asked this. We had someone write in and says we had, do the owners who volunteer to do work on condo property need to be insured, and how would we pay them? Can the volunteers sign a paper saying they won't sue the association? Is that okay?
Well, there could be instances where you might want to have owner volunteer, their time. An example would be, landscaping, beautification, or, whatever other reason. But I think the important point here is that, yes, these volunteers should be insured. And my understanding is that the directors and officers insurance that typically covers boards from errors and omissions, that insurance typically will cover volunteers. Now, that is going to be, on a case-by-case basis, very specific to your situation. So my suggestion is to definitely contact the association insurance agent, let the agent know what the plans are for volunteers, and confirm that there is coverage, whether it's under the D&O policy or any other insurance policy, whether there's coverage for these volunteers, and if not, if there's coverage that they can obtain. If there isn't coverage, then, I wouldn't recommend enlisting volunteers. There's, potential exposure to the association, if a volunteer gets injured. Now, in terms of asking, volunteer to, sign some kind of document, I presume it would be in the form of a, release.
Release.
Basically, if you get injured, you can't come after the association. Those are just not bulletproof, right? I mean, you can try to present such a document to a volunteer, and the volunteer may or may not sign it. They could act as a deterrent, but certainly they're not bulletproof. And it certainly, it may not necessarily prevent the claim from being made. As you know, we live in a very litigious society.
Yes.
So anyone can sue anyone for anything and claim anything and see if it sticks. So,
Kirsten, give everybody the phone number that's good for all, both Tampa, Orlando, Palm Beach, and Pompano.
Sure, Steve. The main number is 954-928-1234. 0680. And, it does go to the Pompano office, but it's where the main switchboard is. But with a, click of a button, they can transfer the call here to Tampa. That's the amazing thing about technology.
Well, what great questions tonight. A lot of participation. Kirsten, again, have a happy and healthy new year to you and your family. We will see you next year, next month.
Indeed.
Have a good one.
And same to you and to everyone. Thanks for listening.
Kay Bender-Rimbon. And that's it for us today. Great questions. Thanks for calling in. Thanks for sending your questions in. We'll be back with you next week with more Ask the Experts. Thank you, Rebel.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Experts show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.